try and do a stream. I've never really done this before, and I'll have to get used to it as well. So I have set up my laptop here in one of my upstairs rooms, and at the moment I don't have and I'll have to get used to the fact that the camera is actually way up there, whereas when I'm looking at myself, I'm looking at myself way down here. So I don't think I will actually broadcast this stream. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to find out how stable the internet up here is, because I've got a Wi-Fi connection. And I know that when I use Skype for Business with my business laptop, I run into a lot of issues, and it keeps telling me, for example, it just disconnects from the internet while Skype is still running, and I can have phone calls and phone conversations with people, but I can't use the internet. So something is really weird. I have also noticed that this isn't something that only happens at home, but it seems to be something that also happens when I'm in the work network at work. So I guess that there is more going on there than I'm aware of, and it may not actually have anything to do with my internet. I am getting TP-Link adapters, which basically, I don't know if they exist outside of the UK and Ireland, but how it works is you basically plug them into your electricity socket in the wall. You connect the TP-Link adapter to your router, and then the signal is broadcast throughout the electric wiring of your home, and then you can have a second TP-Link adapter and then actually create a WAN, or you can plug in your LAN instead of actually having to use the Wi-Fi, which can be quite good if, for example, you have problems with your network card. On one of my older laptops, the network card was really temperamental, and it wasn't such a good idea. So, but of course, you know, I'm just now talking. So why am I setting this up? Well, I'm setting up all of this because I do want to play more role-playing games, and I also have discovered a system which is only available in German, and I am waiting for the books to arrive. I wouldn't say I've gone all in, but I have gone in with quite a lot of purchases. I've bought the Worlds book, I've got the Rules book, I've bought 3, I believe. Yeah, I think it's 3 expansion books, which basically are regional information books, which which I really like, contain adventures set in the region. But sadly, it's only available in German, and I would probably not ever be able to play it here in Ireland, simply because the rule book is 400 pages long. There is no way I can translate 400 pages on my own and type them up and then hand them to the group and say, please read these rules. I don't have the time. And also, if you've ever done any translation work, unless you have like a digitally mastered text that you can use a cat tool on, translating pen and paper is just, you know, and then or typing it up while you're translating is not really how you do it anymore. So one way of doing this is to get active in RPG communities that play online. And I have in recent months, or let's go back a little, over the last 18 months or so, I have rekindled my love with, or my love affair, I should say, with online RPG playthroughs. A very long time ago, I subscribed to Yog-Sothoth, which is an English group that play Call of Cthulhu related games. And I even funded their Indiegogo book of their not Murder on the Orient Express, Horror on the Orient Express. They basically played the whole campaign and it was hilarious, but then they turned it into a book. And I crowdfunded this because I thought it was a hilarious idea. But over time, my interest in Call of Cthulhu maybe waned a little, especially because I have issues with a lot of the stuff that is produced by Chaosium, because I believe that they simply reduce everything down to it has to be a Cthulhian entity, and it doesn't matter that it doesn't really have any story behind it. You just put it in there, and then weird stuff happens, and then everybody dies or goes crazy. However, having said this, there are plenty of people who have been creating Cthulhian-esque, let's call it Cthulhian-esque storylines that have helped push the system towards me, where I'm like, yes, I really like using, for example, the latest Cthulhu, Call of Cthulhu edition. I did a review on my channel. I really love it. I think it's really well done. I just do not want to, I just don't want to play those Chaosium created adventures because they are so samey, they are so boring, and they feel like somebody found a gold nugget, which is the name Lovecraft, and now they're just doing it over and over and over again. So I don't like them. But there are plenty of of people who write really good adventures. One of the most recent ones that I've come across is a collection called The Things We Leave Behind, which is for mature audiences only. And they've got 4 really good adventures, and I've seen playthroughs of 2 of those. One of them that I saw actually required that the person who ran it did a lot of work on it because it was very, very complex, and there was very, very little preparation work done by the adventure itself. So when they wrote the adventure, they put in a lot of information, but it wasn't really a stringent story. But they are really excellent. And I've seen other publications by non-Chaosium publishing houses, but also people who write one-shots, which are basically on one page. One is the skiing holiday, which is based on the Dyatlov Pass incident in Russia in the 50s. And they are just so extremely well done, where you can kind of go, okay, well, yes, you can use this, and there may be a Cthulhian entity in there, but it really doesn't matter because it is horror. It is horror-based, you know, it doesn't have to be a MyGo. And what I don't like about Chaosium is that they overdo it. No, it's not enough to have just one thing, let's say, just deep ones. But no, they throw in a MyGo, and then a Biyaki comes in. Oh, and just while we're at it, let's have a Chthonian, just for the kicks. And that kind of then turns it into a boring, oh, monster of the week. Oh, yeah, there's another one. Oh, look, she's gone crazy. Oh, let's just create another character, without the substance behind it that should be part and parcel of any role-playing game. Even if it's Call of Cthulhu, where you do not have a longevity built into your characters, because they will go crazy. If they find out too much about the mythos, if they are confronted with too much horror, they will go crazy, and that will be the end of them. But even this built-in obsolescence of the characters shouldn't stand in the way of actual storytelling. And I think it does in a lot of Chaosium publications. But couple of months, 1.5 years ago or a year ago, I can't remember, I came across Into the Darkness, which is a really, really good channel. It's featured on mine as well, and I'm a patron, and they do stellar work. They play old and new, homebrew, classic, whatnot, Call of Cthulhu games. And that kind of rekindled my love for online role-playing, because Yog-Sothoth is audio only. The guys at Into the Darkness play online using webcams. And I kind of would almost want to join them, but the problem is they're in the US, I'm in Ireland, time difference is 6 hours minimum. It's just not going to happen. Then I kind of got more and more into Das Schwarze Auge, and there, even just for myself to better understand the system, better to get more of a feeling for the world and everything, I decided to look around, and I found 2 very, very good channels. One is Claudine Spielt, and I've referenced her channel, and I've linked to her playthroughs on some occasions, several occasions in most recent weeks, and Affendämon 2. They are partners in crime. So they often play in each other's games, and they have a playing style which I really like. I think it's great. It's really about storytelling. They take the rules seriously and they will apply them, and they know them. But it's always about the story. And I've seen, especially Claudine, take old DSA adventures from DSA 1 from the 80s, which a lot of people criticize for being like old school, and there's a lot of plot holes, and it's like, it's the 80s, role-playing was pretty new in Germany, But she ran them even using the DSA 5 rules, which is great. And they're just very entertaining to watch. I'm going to link, if I'm ever going to publish this stream, and I'm at this stage, if it's technically okay, because that's also what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to test my internet connection. I will actually link her Auckland trilogy at the bottom of this comment box. And they basically play in German. And of course, Germany is just 1 hour away from where I am. There is a time difference, but it's minimal. And so I got involved in Nerdpool, which is a community, an online community for role players in Germany, through the language of German. And so I'm now trying to find a group that I can join, or I'm even thinking that I might run an adventure for someone who's interested. I mean, I could run one of the Call of Cthulhu one-shots if somebody's interested, but I haven't posted anything about this, but I will. But in order for me to be able to do this, of course, I need to have a setup. So I haven't been using this webcam for a very long time. Those of you who go back to my very old videos of like the beginning of my YouTube career, as it were, I was using this one. So now I've set it up here. It's still working. It's a Microsoft something or other HD camera with a built-in microphone. And that's what I'm using now. So this is really a test stream. So I have been mentioning, and I really have to do something about this camera. Maybe put it down here. I'm just going to move the camera. Oops. Or yeah, I don't know if that's better. Not by much. Yeah, I think that's a little bit better, because at least now, I mean, I will never fully look into the camera, because unless, it's kind of a bit distracting, because when you're interacting with someone else, you're always kind of like looking at them, and now I don't even have anyone to look at, but you would always kind of tend to look towards where you're seeing yourself. I mean, that's normal human behavior, but let's just put it back up here, just for the time being, like so. Okay, so so at least you can see my Chinese cupboard back there. So what is this game that I've been talking about? Well, the game is called Splittermond, and it was first released in 2014, and it was released, or it is released and worked on, and it's the property of a German publishing house called Uhrwerk, which is German for clockwork. And it's, I would say, a classic high fantasy role-playing game, which is somewhere in between Das Schwarze Auge and Pathfinder. So if we say that Das Schwarze Auge is a little more fantasy, high fantasy than Der eine Ring, the One Ring by Tolkien, or based on Tolkien, and you have Pathfinder and D&D at the very, very high end, with some really weird stuff happening, really weird races that you can play, tieflings, dragonborn, whatnot. In DSA 5, you have only humanoid races. You've got humans, dwarfs, elves. And I think that's it. Humans, dwarves, or elves, right? Because you can't play orcs and there are no gnomes. Yeah. But then, you know, Pathfinder and D&D go all out. Now, Splittermond, which is translatable as Splinter Moon, is kind of a little bit in between. So it has mainly humanoid races, with the exception of one. So we've got dwarves, Alben, which are elves, humans, gnomes, and we have one non-humanoid race, and that is the wargs or Vargen. Now, they are bipedal, sentient, intelligent wolf creatures that are basically human height, maybe a little bit taller. Their lifespan is 50 years. Gnomes can live up to 150 years. Humans have a normal human lifespan, and I don't recall just off the top of my head how long elves live. And so it's a little more towards the Das Schwarze Auge end of the spectrum, but it is a lot more towards Pathfinder with regard to the fact that magic permeates the whole world. In DSR, magic is something that people are born with, but only a limited number of people are born with it. And then, of course, you have the priest caste, the blessed ones, and they derive their carnal energy from worshipping their relevant god. In Splittermond, every person, if it's the hero, if it's the miller next door, if it's the carpenter, if it's the scribe at the magistrate's office, they all have access to magic if they choose to learn it. So magic has different schools. I don't know how many, I never counted them, but there are plenty, you know, life, death, darkness. And you can, and as you can see, my bronchitis still isn't going away. And they can all access magic, and it's like you learn a trade. It's like you learn a craft. You can do woodworking or wood turning, but you can also learn dark magic, well, darkness magic, for example, or death magic. And so everyone has access to it because it's a craft that you learn. It's like it's like an apprenticeship that you take. You just have to decide that your character has the following magic schools available to them. Of course, you can make a decision to have a magic user character. Then they will probably have more magic schools that they invest in, whereas a fighter might invest some of their points into fighting styles and whatnot. But it is a world full of magic. It's also a world that has a lot more monsters and a lot more strange beings than Das Schwarze Auge. I mean, when you buy the bestiary of Das Schwarze Auge, which I can't recommend because it's a waste of money, it's very thin and there is not much in it, you know. Whereas if you, I mean, I think I've got 3 bestiaries for 3 additional bestiaries for Pathfinder, plus all of the bestiary information that is in the basic rules of Pathfinder. So, you know, endless possibilities. And the world itself is based on the Earth. It's 80,000 by 10,000 kilometers, so it's huge. And it has all climate zones. And the cultures are kind of reminiscent of Earth. You have like the Germanic culture, North Germanic Skaldic culture, then you've got East Asian culture, you've got Arabian Nights type cultures, you've got African type cultures. And then you have the gnomes that have pretty much their own gnomic culture, and they have different branches of their own race that have lived through very different faiths during their evolutionary history. And The game itself, I haven't played it, but I have watched several playthroughs of different adventures, and I really like it. It's been out for 5 years now, thereabouts. This is recorded in March 2019, so if it came out sometime in 2014, so we're looking at its 5-year anniversary. And what's interesting about its publishing history is that they published the world description, which is around 200 pages, as a book first. No rules, just the world. This is Lorakis, that's the name of the world, the name of the planet. This is what it's about. This is what the Splittermonde are about. What is a Splittermond? How does that work? What is the world like? Who lives there? Blah, blah, blah. No rules. And I didn't know this, but I read it in a blog, and the person who was writing the blog said, and that is kind of a little bit almost counterintuitive. Why would you do this? Why would you sit there and create a world and write a book about it and then release it without the rules? I mean, what do you expect people to do with that? And the person then answered it themselves, because when I read it, I was a bit puzzled too, because I know usually you have like the rule book, which is a description of the world, as well as unless it's a set of rules that is, like generic, where you don't have a world where it's set in, like Fabula, for example, or I believe GURPS as well, is world free. And then you end up with this, and you kind of go, okay, so why would anyone do this? And the answer was because they thought, we've got such an interesting world, and we just want to give this to people that they can use whatever system they like and play in it. And then they release the rules. And there is another interesting twist to their release policy, because the rules, 400 pages, full color, I think they're now on their 3rd edition, are available for free. You can go online to Splittermond, to Uhrwerk. You can download the 400-page PDF for free. And you don't need any other books. You may want to get some of the adventures, but there are, I think, 2 or 3 adventures that are free to download as well. You can just download the rules and play. You don't need the world book, because the world is also described in the rule book. It's a lot, excuse me, smaller, of course, the description, because you only have like 20, 30 pages. I don't know. I never counted them. But you can play, and you don't have to pay. That's a very interesting release strategy, which, in my opinion, shows that they really, really, really believe in the quality of their work. But they also say, we respect your opinion. So here it is for free. Go away with it and do whatever you like. If you like what you see, you can come back. There will be more, and there has been more. There have been so many regional descriptions published, adventures. I think I saw at the last count 26 on their website that you can buy. And some of them may even be anthologies that contain more than one adventure. I didn't check, but it was 26 books when I looked at, or 26 publications, I should say, when I looked at adventures. And that kind of makes me like them as a publishing house. That kind of gives me a good feeling about them. I really like how they treat their as yet non-existent fan base, because when it first came out, nobody knew Splittermond. I will, as soon as I've got the books, do an online character creation. And I will 2 of them. I'll be doing 2 of them. I'll be doing one with pen and paper. I'll use the PDF version of it, and then just fill it in. And then I will do one online using the Genesis character creation software, which is free to use, to kind of get a feeling for how this works, because I believe character creation is always a very important thing to do. If you want to understand how a system works, character creation will take you very far. So the game itself is based around a long list of abilities that you can get. You know, you have basic character traits like charisma, strength. I don't know what they're now called in German. It's more than the 6 you have in Fabula. I think there was 8 or so. I can't remember all of them. And then you have abilities that make sense for your character. So you say, okay, well, you know, there are archetypes. Like, I want to be a traveling priest. I want to be a warrior priest. I want to be a knowledge priest. So those would be the people who stay in the temple. So that's the priests taken care of. Then you have the fighters. Then you have the ranger type people. Then you have the diplomats, politicians type people. Then you have the thieves kind of people. So it's archetypal, you know, it's like generic fantasy. And then it makes sense for them to have particular abilities. So for example, I know one player and he plays a gnome who is a member of the Dackersmuir Brandwehr. Now, Dackersmuir Brandwehr is is in the gnomish city of Dackersmuir. They've got a fire brigade, and so he's a member of that fire brigade, and he's a diver. So he does salvage diving, and so he's got a harpoon as a weapon. He's got a huge diving suit, one with a big helmet, and he has all kinds of things that he can do, because as a salvage diver, he needs to be able to do certain things. So his swimming and his diving have very high scores. Of course, using a harpoon has a very high score, and so on and so forth. So he's built this character based on what this character would have to be able to do if he is a diver, and works for the Dackersmuir Brandwehr. Or you can have one person played a dwarf who is an investigator. So he's like a Sherlock Holmes, and he's even got a dog named Wilbur. And so what would an investigator need? And he's kind of like an older person, so he's not really a fighter. He's got more brains than brawn. You know, so the game allows for all of this, and allows for all of this in very much depth, and that's what I really like. I see one problem with the game, apart from the fact that it's at the moment only available in German, which means that, you know, it'll be impossible for me to play it here because my group simply doesn't speak German. And that is the fighting system. Because they have a fighting system which uses a so-called tick track. So everyone at the beginning of the fight rolls initiative. That's, you know, normal. So you determine when you would start. Again, normal. But then everything you do takes a certain amount of time, a certain amount of ticks. So I think if you move up to your speed, that's 5 ticks. If you draw a certain weapon, let's say a ballista, and you want to use it, that has a certain speed. Each weapon has a certain speed. So if you, I'm just making this up now, but if you want to take out your two-handed sword and get yourself into position, you know, brace yourself and get ready to hit, that's going to take you longer than somebody just drawing a knife. Or not even drawing anything, but just pulling back their fist and hitting you. And so you have a physical representation of this tick track, and you have tokens for everyone taking part in the combat situation. And you move people along. And you can see who's next because they're on the lowest tick number. And then once they have done their action, however long this action takes, they are pushed back. Which is great, and which I really, really like, but it is very different from the very abstracted way in which I would say normal role-playing games do combat. And I remember when D&D 4th edition came out, the idea that you brought out the battle mat and you put little tokens or little people, you know, figures on it, and then moved them around, led to huge issues, and people were very unhappy about it. And there was a huge debate. And of course, in Call of Cthulhu, it's all abstracted in Pathfinder. Yes, you can use tokens and you can use battle mats in Pathfinder, but lots of people don't. But I honestly don't think you could play this kind of combat system without the physical tick track. Or if you're using D20, roll D20 or roll 20, whatever it's called, then you would have an online representation of it and online tokens that you move around. I can't really see that this would work without it. Which is a shame, because when I explained this to one of my group, they were like, oh, this is terrible. Don't use it. That's terrible. I would never play that. That was a bit disappointing, but it was also something that I kind of expected, because it kind of addresses the wargamer in me, where I would like to play a lot more tactically, maybe even strategically. And where I sometimes find it a bit problematic, say, oh yeah, so initiative, so next round, yeah. And everyone, unless you're loading a gun, or weapon, which is maybe usually one additional action, it's like, oh yeah, and I've got this action, I've got that action, and an extra action here, and blah. And I understand why they did it, because also when you fight, you have various things you can do. You can use spells, of course, which would take a certain amount of time to cast. You can use special abilities, you can use special maneuvers, and it does make sense that they will take different amounts of time, and that you can actually see how long it takes. And it does make a difference if I have this awesome spell, but it takes me 20 ticks to cast. By the time I cast that spell, everybody else might already have been annihilated by that fiend. So maybe I cast one that is a lot less powerful, but I can cast it within 2 ticks, so that I get to go first and maybe get in a hit, maybe inflict pain, maybe inflict a wound that will slow the enemy down. And I think that makes perfect sense. But I think it's a very different playing style. So I have now been talking for 32 minutes and 7 seconds. So I think this should give me some kind of indication how good the internet connection was, because I'm going to review the stream to see how it went. If I'm going to post it, then by now you will know that my next project is trying to find an online group where I can play Splittermond. If you don't get to see the stream, then you won't know, but maybe one day I will update you on the fact that I've been hopefully successful. So I wish you a pleasant rest of the day, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.